an old house full of mysteries and secrets, challenges everything you know about the supernatural. When a young architect decides to restore what seems like a simple, abandoned mansion, he ends up awakening dark forces that have been dormant for centuries. As he explores the house, he begins to realize that perhaps the greatest transformation it needs is not a renovation, but a confrontation with the evil itself. Get ready for a chilling suspense where each room hides more than just dust and dirt. Like the plot, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. The house at the corner had always been a mystery to the residents of the neighborhood. For years, the abandoned property had been covered by thick, unruly vegetation, making the place even more eerie and isolated. Its windows were shattered, the door creaked in the wind, and every time the full moon illuminated the street, it seemed to come to life, casting a menacing aura that kept even the bravest at bay. It was the kind of house where stories were told to the younger ones, but no one dared approach. "They say no one who lived there ever survived," the elderly would whisper. The rumors were endless. Some spoke of spirits haunting the place. Others believed the mansion concealed dark secrets from a troubled past, a perfect spot to fuel the curious and fearful minds of the neighborhood. But one day, something unexpected happened. Gabriel, a young architect who had just moved into the area, decided he would be the one to bring life to that house. He had always been fond of challenges, and when he heard about the state of the building, he saw it as a unique opportunity to transform something abandoned into something grand. Ignoring the rumors, he bought the house. On the day he arrived to begin the first work, the entire neighborhood seemed to be watching. Curious and apprehensive, the neighbors peered through their windows. Some whispered, others shook their heads in disapproval. "This kid doesn't know what he's getting into," they thought. But Gabriel was determined. He didn't believe in superstitions. To him, the house was just a potential project, a work that could transform a mere structure into a new home. But soon, he would realize that this house wasn't quite as simple as it seemed. Gabriel spent the first few hours exploring the house, his heart racing with excitement. It was everything he had imagined and more, huge with high ceilings and intricate architectural details hidden beneath years of neglect. There was something about it that called to him, an undeniable pull. The walls, though cracked and peeling, seemed to whisper stories of the past. By late afternoon, he had already made a list of the changes he wanted to implement. New flooring, a fresh coat of paint, repairing the roof, the usual renovations one would expect when transforming an old house into something livable. But there was something else, something deeper that Gabriel couldn't quite place. It was as if the house itself was trying to tell him something. As night began to fall, the temperature in the house dropped suddenly, and a strange chill ran through Gabriel's body. He shrugged it off as a draft, but deep down, he felt uneasy. The full moon outside cast eerie shadows across the rooms, making the house seem even more alive. He decided to stay the night, to get a feel for the place and see how he could begin working the next day. He set up a small cot in one of the rooms, the one that felt the least cold. But just as he was about to fall asleep, he heard it, a soft, distant whisper. It was as though someone was speaking, but he couldn't understand the words. Gabriel sat up, straining his ears. The whispers continued, coming from different parts of the house, like a conversation held just out of reach. A chill ran down his spine, and for the first time since he arrived, doubt began to creep into his mind. Maybe, just maybe, there was something more to the rumors than he had thought. He stood up and moved cautiously through the dark house, trying to follow the whispers. The noise grew louder as he descended the stairs, but then, as if the house had tired of playing games, it suddenly stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. Gabriel felt a cold sweat forming on his brow. Was it just his imagination? Or had he just heard something he wasn't supposed to? The next morning, Gabriel awoke to the sunlight creeping through the cracked windows. The whispers from the night before had left him uneasy, but he tried to brush them off as mere exhaustion playing tricks on his mind. After all, it had been a long day of planning, and the stress of moving into a new neighborhood could explain a restless night. But as he began his work, things started to take a strange turn. He entered the main living room to assess the damage and immediately felt the air grow heavier, as if the space had grown denser overnight. His eyes scanned the room, trying to ignore the unsettling feeling gnawing at him. The walls, covered in dust and grime, seemed to pulse faintly, as if they had a life of their own. Gabriel reached out to touch one of the beams above the fireplace, but before his hand made contact, he hesitated. There was something wrong about this place. He could feel it in his bones, but he refused to acknowledge it. His focus was on the transformation, the potential. He couldn't afford to get distracted now. That evening, he returned to the house after a quick dinner in town, determined to make progress. As he entered, a strange odor filled the air, old and musty, like something forgotten for decades. He immediately recognized it as the scent of decay, yet it didn't make sense. There were no signs of mold or rodents, and the house had only been abandoned for a few years. He walked through the rooms, but every step he took seemed to echo louder than the last. The floorboards creaked beneath his feet, and he was suddenly aware of how lonely the house felt, as if it was empty not just of people, but of life. Gabriel felt an inexplicable urge to go into the basement. His rational mind told him it was absurd, but something pulled him forward. He descended the narrow, winding staircase, the temperature dropping with each step. The further he went, the more he felt the weight of unseen eyes on him. Reaching the bottom, Gabriel noticed something he hadn't seen before, an old wooden chest in the corner of the basement. It was covered in dust and cobwebs, but its presence seemed deliberate, as if someone had placed it there waiting for him. His fingers brushed against the chest's surface, and immediately a low, almost imperceptible hum vibrated through the air. His heart skipped a beat. Was it just the house settling, or was something alive down here with him? Gabriel's mind raced as he slowly unlatched the chest, the creaking of the wood piercing the silence of the basement. As the chest creaked open, Gabriel's eyes widened. Inside, there was nothing but old, yellowed papers and a small, weathered book. The air around him grew colder, and he shivered involuntarily. His curiosity, however, outweighed his fear. He reached in and picked up the book. It was bound in dark leather, the edges frayed from years of neglect. The cover had no title, no markings, just the faintest hint of something written in a language he didn't recognize. His hands trembled as he opened the first page. The text inside was written in the same strange language, but there was an odd drawing near the top, an intricate symbol that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Gabriel stared at it, captivated. His instincts screamed at him to close the book, to leave the basement and never come back, but his obsession with uncovering the house's history kept him rooted to the spot. The book seemed to hum softly, as if it were alive, its pages flicking in the breeze created by Gabriel's breath. As he flipped through the yellowed pages, some familiar words began to emerge, though they were fragmented, scattered across the text. It wasn't just a book, it was a journal, a record of something dark. Suddenly, he was jolted back by a loud bang from upstairs. His heart pounded in his chest, and the book slipped from his hands, landing with a soft thud on the cold floor. His mind raced. Had someone else come into the house? He was sure he had locked the door, but as he stood there trying to steady his breathing, the sound of footsteps echoed from above. Gabriel hesitated, his thoughts a whirlpool of uncertainty. Slowly, he made his way back up the stairs, each step heavier than the last. The house seemed to grow quieter with each passing moment, the only sound the pounding of his own heartbeat. When he reached the top of the stairs, he was met with an unsettling sight. The front door, which he had locked before descending to the basement, was wide open. He cautiously approached the door, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The air outside was thick and heavy, and the world beyond the threshold seemed far more ominous than it had before. A chill ran down his spine as he stepped out onto the porch, looking around for any sign of movement. Nothing. No one was there. But as he turned to go back inside, he noticed something strange, a footprint, muddy and large, imprinted on the floor just inside the door. Gabriel's stomach sank. It wasn't his. Gabriel couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak of the house seemed louder, every shadow seemed to stretch further. He closed the door behind him, his mind racing, but the strange footprint was still there, a clear sign that someone had been in the house. He locked the door again, more out of instinct than logic, and stepped back into the dimly lit hallway. The book, forgotten on the floor, beckoned him. It was as if the house itself was urging him to uncover more. Gabriel fought the growing unease that crept along his spine. He knew he couldn't let fear control him. He had come here to transform this place, to breathe life into it. But what if the house had its own plans? After a few moments of hesitation, Gabriel went back down into the basement to retrieve the book. As he touched its cover again, the hum seemed to intensify, vibrating through his fingertips, sending a jolt of energy through his entire body. He opened it once more, and this time the pages seemed to almost pull themselves open. The journal's entries grew more detailed, describing rituals, sacrifices, and strange events that occurred in the house. Gabriel's mind reeled as he read about previous inhabitants, who had all mysteriously disappeared or been driven to madness. Each entry described a disturbing symbol, exactly like the one on the first page, that appeared in different parts of the house. The more Gabriel read, the more the room seemed to close in on him. The basement walls began to shift, subtly at first, but then more aggressively, as if the house itself was coming alive around him. The temperature dropped once again, and he heard the unmistakable sound of whispering voices echoing off the walls. The words in the book became clearer. The house is not what it seems. It takes what it wants. Beware the spirits that linger within its walls. You are not alone. Ish! A rush of cold air swept through the basement, blowing out the flickering candle he had lit. Gabriel stood frozen, his eyes wide with terror. The whispering grew louder, now surrounding him. He slammed the book shut, but the voices did not stop. They circled his mind, repeating the same chilling message. You're not alone. It's coming for you. Suddenly the lights in the house flickered, then went out completely, plunging Gabriel into complete darkness. A presence, invisible yet palpable, pressed against him from all sides. He was no longer in control. Gabriel's breath came in short, shallow gasps as he stood frozen in the pitch-black basement. His heart raced, and the weight of an unseen presence pressed in on him from all directions. The oppressive silence that followed the lights going out was broken only by the rapid beat of his heart and the eerie whispering that refused to fade. It was as if the house itself was breathing, drawing him deeper into its mystery. Desperately, he groped for the flashlight he had brought with him earlier, but it too was gone. It was as though the house had claimed everything he had. Panic began to rise in his chest, but some strange instinct, urged him to stay still, to listen. The whispers weren't random, they were deliberate, each word somehow familiar, like a memory locked away in the back of his mind. Then, just as suddenly as it had gone out, the candle flickered back to life. Gabriel looked up, his eyes wide with disbelief. The dim light illuminated the basement, casting long shadows across the cold stone walls. But as he glanced around, he noticed something terrifying. Standing in the far corner, just at the edge of the light, was a figure. It was a shadowy silhouette, too indistinct to make out any features, but it was tall, taller than any person Gabriel had seen. and it was slowly moving toward him. The whispers were louder now, more urgent, as though the figure was speaking to him, but the words were indecipherable. His pulse quickened, and a sense of dread washed over him. Was this some trick of the light? Or was he really not alone? His mind screamed for him to run, but his feet felt rooted to the ground. It was as if the house itself had locked him in place, preventing any movement. The figure came closer, and Gabriel could now make out its outline more clearly, though his brain refused to acknowledge what he was seeing. The figure was not human. The shape was too distorted, its edges shifting and warping as if made from smoke or shadow. It was tall, gaunt, and its presence radiated an energy that Gabriel couldn't explain. The whispers now grew louder, and Gabriel could feel the cold, the oppressive weight of the figure pressing down on him. Then in a voice that was both soft and thunderous, it spoke, "You have awakened us." The words sent a jolt through Gabriel's body, and the house seemed to pulse with the force of the voice. The figure raised a hand, its long skeletal fingers outstretched, and for the briefest moment Gabriel thought he saw the faintest glow in its eyes, if they could even be called eyes. With a sudden surge of adrenaline, Gabriel broke free from the paralysis. He turned and ran up the stairs as fast as his legs could carry him, the figure's presence following him in the dark, its whispers chasing him all the way. But just as he reached the top of the stairs, a new sound filled the air. A deep, guttural growl echoed from below, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps, heavy, slow, but unmistakably real. Gabriel slammed the door shut behind him, his chest heaving. The growl continued, vibrating through the house, but for now he was safe, at least, he thought. The house was awake. Gabriel's heart pounded in his chest as he slammed the basement door shut. He leaned against it, gasping for breath, trying to gather his thoughts. The footsteps from below were growing louder, the heavy sound of something or someone approaching him from the depths of the house. The growl echoed in the stillness, vibrating through the walls, making his skin crawl. He fumbled for his phone in his pocket, hoping for some sign of life beyond this nightmare. But the screen remained blank, powerless. The house had swallowed all communication, leaving him isolated in its sinister grip. Gabriel stumbled backward into the dimly lit living room. The shadows seemed to stretch longer, closing in on him, as if the very air had thickened. He could feel the weight of the house bearing down on him, its walls alive with a palpable hunger. He could hear whispers now, not just from the basement, but from every corner of the house, seeping through the cracks, invading his mind. "You are ours. You cannot leave." His hands trembled as he tried to steady himself, but the overwhelming sensation of being trapped suffocated him. The house wasn't just haunted by spirits, it was alive, conscious, aware. It had been waiting for someone like him to come, someone who was willing to challenge its darkness. And now, Gabriel was the one it wanted. His thoughts drifted back to the journal. The entries spoke of a curse, of a house that could not be destroyed, that could not be abandoned. It fed on the souls of its inhabitants, trapping them within its walls. The more he thought about it, the more the weight of the words seemed to settle into his bones. The house didn't just want to be renovated, it wanted something else. It wanted him. There was only one way out. Gabriel knew it with an unsettling certainty. He had to destroy the house. He had to break whatever bond held it together. But how? The journal had no answers, only more questions. As the growling from below grew louder, he realized that time was running out. He had to act before the house consumed him, just like it had consumed the others who had lived here before. The whispers were now a cacophony in his mind, urging him to do something he wasn't sure he could do. With a surge of adrenaline, Gabriel ran toward the front door. He tried to turn the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic gripped him as he shook the door with all his strength. The house was locking him in. There was no escape. He turned toward the stairs, where the figure had stood only moments ago. The growling from the basement now sounded like a deep rumble from the bowels of the earth. There was no time left. He had to destroy it before it destroyed him. Gabriel's mind raced as he stood there in the middle of the darkened room, his pulse echoing in his ears. The house felt like it was closing in on him, its walls pressing in with an unseen force. Every whisper, every growl from the depths of the house, every breath of the wind outside seemed to be pulling him deeper into its grasp. There was no escaping it. The house had already chosen him. He glanced at the journal in his hands, the pages flicking in the dim light, as if alive, urging him forward. The words from the cursed book had come to life in his mind, and now he understood. He knew what he had to do. There was one way to break the cycle, one way to free himself, and perhaps everyone else who had ever fallen victim to this house's insidious influence. But it would come at a cost. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, wrapping around him like invisible chains. "You cannot fight us," they taunted. "We are eternal. You will be ours, just like the others." The growl from the basement rumbled again, as if something massive was moving closer. He looked around, the walls now pulsing with an unnatural energy. Gabriel had never been a believer in the supernatural, but now, in the face of this overwhelming power, he had no choice but to accept it. This house was not merely haunted, it was a living, breathing entity fed by the souls it trapped. His eyes fell on the basement stairs again. The dark figure from earlier still lingered in his mind, its elongated form and glowing eyes haunting him. The figure's words echoed, "You have awakened us." That was it. The house wasn't a mere structure, it was a gateway, a conduit for something far worse, something ancient and dark that had been lying dormant, waiting for someone like Gabriel to bring it back to life. He had to close the door. He had to sever the connection, lock it away forever. But how? How could he fight something that was older and more powerful than anything he could comprehend? In his mind, the answer came clear. The house had to be destroyed from the inside. He had to confront whatever lay in the basement, whatever it was that had been waiting there for him. The figure, the growl, the whispers, they were all part of it. If he could confront it, if he could face the heart of the darkness, perhaps he could break the cycle. With trembling hands, Gabriel turned toward the basement door once more. He knew it wouldn't be easy. The house would fight him every step of the way, but he had no choice. He had already given everything to this place. He took one last breath, steeling himself for what was to come. He was no longer just an architect. He was a man determined to save himself or die trying. With a final glance at the darkened house, Gabriel descended into the abyss.